Hi, this is Melanie of Pardesi Reviews, and I'm here to do a review of Rocketry, The Nambi Effect, starring, written, and directed by Madhavan. If you're new to Pardesi Reviews, I do trailer reactions and film reviews of Indian cinema. I saw the Tamil version of this film. Incredibly, Madhavan, this is his first film that he's directing, and he filmed it in 3 languages, Tamil, Hindi, and English, and it was released in 6 languages. So I chose the Tamil, partially because the local theater near me does an intermission, and it's quite a long film. But I'm feeling like I'm not enough of a Shah Rukh Khan fan because the Hindi and the English versions of this film have Shah Rukh Khan as an interviewer of Nambi, and the Tamil version has Sirsha. So I'm sorry, Shah Rukh, I didn't pick you first. But anyway, it's an incredible biography of a real person, a real rocket scientist, Nambi Narayanan, and I didn't know anything about the man. The only thing I know about the Indian space race and everything is what I have seen in other sci-fi kind of movies from India. So I really didn't know anything going into the film other than what I'd seen in the trailer. I know Madhavan has a deep respect for the real man, and we see that because the real man himself appears in the final moments of the film. When Sirsha, and I've heard Shah Rukh does this in the Hindi version, that Sirsha gives him an apology from the Indian people, as a representative of the Indian people. And so, at that point, it switches from Madhavan to the real man himself, who rejects the apology and says he's still, waiting. And then we have the text over the credits saying how he not only won his innocence in the Supreme Court, but he won a monetary judgment from the government of Kerala, paid him back. Anyway, so I didn't, this is an incredible, the scope of this story, of this biopic, is a lot. Wow, a lot for a first-time director, a first-time screenwriter to take on something. I mean, you can see how much he loves Nambi, respects him, and wants to show everything, all these amazing things that this man has done, and why it was so egregious. The film, we see towards the beginning of the film, and you've seen the scenes in the trailer, where he's arrested, brutally beaten, for days and days and days in jail, falsely accused, fights for years, and finally wins in the Indian Supreme Court his innocence. But we have the first half of the film really not dealing with that yet, but telling us the story of why is this person an incredible man. Talking about how he was accepted in a special fellowship in Princeton, how he convinced a scientist who had worked on the moon landing in America at Princeton to allow him to study under him and do his thesis with him. All of these incredible stories of his early days working with the ISRO. He rejected an offer from NASA, and how he developed rocket engines that allowed India to not only place a satellite, but have a mission to Mars. So he wants to show us how incredible he is. And there's so much scientific jargon being bannered about. And my husband was actually an astrophysics major. And I get a little bit of the science, but wow, it's just, over your head. So how does Madhavan try to make us, the common people, understand how incredible this scientist was, compared to all of, his budgets, compared to the huge budgets of NASA, and he's working in a lab in France, against the huge national budgets. And here we have India with very small budget. How does he, how incredible is it that he's so successful compared to them? So one of my favorite scenes is right before the interval. And so we have seen that the French team has an error in their engine that he points out, thus saving them money, and they're indebted to him. And then he comes up with this engine, but the only place he can test it is, they can't afford to build a testing rig, so they bring it to France to test it there. And we're seeing the faces of the white scientists and his team of Indian scientists. And you see the length of time that this rocket engine performs. Madhavan is standing there confidently as Nambi. His team are holding their breath, waiting for the whole thing to explode, right? And then when it passes a certain moment, they're just breathing these sighs of relief. You see money being passed in hats, like the people in the room have had bets on how long. And then you see the faces of the white scientists and their shock and stunned at that it lasts until the fuel runs out. And the Indian scientists are just jumping up and down. So that's how there's no words. There's very few words in this scene, but we're seeing how much it means to them for this success, in comparison to the French team. Like they've really accomplished something. We see the astonishment on the other team, and then we see the astonishment and pride in the Indian team. Like just all of this emotions are going through everyone's faces. And meanwhile, Nambi stands there confident, and after it's a success, names it the Veracruz. So engine. So I thought that was a really great way to show us, because all the gobbledygook of the technical stuff over our heads, but we can understand when someone really has a success when we've seen other teams fail. And then one of my favorite characters, real people, is a fellow scientist, Uni, played by Sam Mohan. I've already given a spoiler on a big scene, but I don't want to really spoil what happens with his relationship with Nambi. There's something that Nambi does that seems very cold-hearted in service of the mission for the country. And later, there's a scene where there's a surprise at someone who he didn't think would support him as one of the first people to support him in his innocence. So a couple of actors that I want to point out. Sam Mohan in a couple of key scenes, especially, like I said, this scene of conflict earlier, midway, I guess, in the film. And then there's another character who is a scientist of Indian descent but American on the NASA team, Barry Almadev, who is played by Sriram Parthasarathy. Both of them have key supporting roles at various points, and I really enjoyed their performances, both of them. I have not seen either of them in anything before. I was looking up Sam Mohan, and he was in Takeoff. Maybe I saw him in that, or I don't know. Some other couple of Malayalam films, I think, but I don't remember him. But the guy who plays Barry, I'm not sure if he's an American accent. His American accent was so perfect. I'm wondering if he is an Indian American actor. There's a key scene with him at the end. It's never said who put up these false accusations, but obviously they're implying by showing Barry in the U.S. seeing news of Nambi getting awards and all of this at the end, that maybe the Americans had something to do with it. I mean, they're implying it. They're not saying it outright. But my question for you is, there is a dancer from Kerala, like doll, on his desk. Barry's desk, the American's desk, with the green makeup, and I can't remember the name, so I want to know, what's the significance of that? Is that like known to be kind of a villainous kind of implication from classical dance in Kerala, or I'm not sure what is being implied by, the camera focuses right in on it, so I know it has some big meaning. Really honestly asking, I know I've seen Mohanlal in a film where he played a dancer like that, but I'm really curious of what the implications of that was. So like I said, they're not overtly saying it with words, but they're saying it. There's all sorts of crazy stuff in the middle of the film too that like you can't even believe is real. It's like James Bond kind of stuff of trying to get some engines from Russia. And evidently, like, there's even more stuff with some of these stories that, like, you wouldn't even believe if it wasn't real. So he included he included some of it, which was crazy enough. I don't know. I'm wondering, did Madhavan try to pack too much of this man's life in? He's framed a lot of the story through this interview with Surya or with Shah Rukh in the other versions of the film, doing, going interspersed between interview questions to flashbacks of different parts of his life. And it doesn't just focus on the espionage part, which could have been the most dramatic. And it doesn't even get into the courtroom battles that obviously went on for years. I mean, another biopic could have chosen the courtroom as a framing device and then done flashbacks with, deposition questions or whatever for the trials. He doesn't really go there at all. My second favorite scene is how they find out that he is innocent, and that's they're at a wedding. Some people are welcoming them. This is like 3 years or something after the initial arrest. And some people are welcoming them, and a lot of people are just giving them very suspicious looks at this wedding. And then how it changes once everyone gets that news, that they get the phone call. And so I thought, even more dramatic than showing a victory at a court, at a trial, I thought this was even more effective, just really emphasizing how much his life, was turned upside down and then was turned right side up again in that moment, in that dramatic moment. So Madhavan, I thought, was an excellent actor. You completely sympathize with him, even when he's kind of being Nambi himself as being rather arrogant. I mean, he's a rocket scientist, he's a brilliant genius, but also hard driving. And like I said, there's one particular conflict thing of when he chooses to do something for a mission for the country over an individual person, that he's not showing Nambi as this saint that has no flaws and never did anything that you would question. Let's just put it that way. So I don't know. Did he try to bite off too much? I mean, it's so hard when you're trying to do a biopic about. There's so much in one person's life. What do you focus in on? Was it too much for this film? I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed learning all of these different things, but I think it will do very well on streaming. He's made it. I mean, he obviously feels so passionate about this subject and wanting people to know what a real hero this rocket scientist Nambi was for the nation, that everyone should know his story and why, and explain why he's so incredible, why his inventions and his work for the ISRO is so noteworthy. I sympathize with wanting to tell all of that, but there was so much time spent with some of the technical stuff in the first half of the film. I don't know if I wasn't particularly bogged down, but I'm wondering if the general audience will get a little bogged down in that kind of, all of the technical talk in the first half of the film. So we'll see how audiences react to it, but it's very patriotic and a stirring story, and hats off to you, Madhavan, for taking on such an enormous, ambitious project for your very first film as a director and a writer. Oh, I didn't also mention, Simran played his wife, Meena. She didn't have a lot to do in the story, but I thought she was particularly good, and she shows so well how devastating to the family this news was of him being jailed and all of that, and the toll it took on their entire family, but especially on her. So I wanted to shout out her as well. Rakes did the subtitles, of course. This must have been a battle. Oh my gosh, with all of that technical jargon, and there was Russian, and there was all sorts of stuff in the film. But anyway, I really appreciated that Rakes did the subtitles. All right, let me know if you had a chance to see this film. Again, Please, if you know the answer to my question about the dancer doll, green-faced dancer doll at the end of the film, please let me know in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter at PardesiYT. Follow me on Instagram at Pardesi Reviews. And if you hit the bell here when you subscribe, you'll never miss another trailer reaction or film review.